Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today on Masechtas Nedarim daf Samach Dalid. We are going to begin with the new Mishnah, new Parak. Rabbi Eliezer Omer. So Rabbi Eliezer says that Poischin al-Adam b'chvoid Abba v'imoi. That when a person makes a neder, are you able to remove the neder with a Pesach because of the honor of your mother and father? On this, the Ran explains. She'omrim lo. Now, they say to him, if you would have known, would you realize that once it turns out that people find out, your mother and father find out that you're very lenient when it comes to Nedarim, which is not a good thing, that you're frequently making Nedarim, it's going to embarrass your parents. As the Gemara in Sanhedrin says, the Karlu Rishia bar Tzadika, Rishia bar Rishia, Klum Hayisi Neider. They were going to call someone who's a wicked the son of a tzaddik, or Rasha the son of a Rasha. Basically going to say, even though I thought your parents were good, it must be the upbringing wasn't so good. Would you have made such a neder? So that's a Pesach. Lashon Achar says the Ran, Shi'omru Shi'ata Lamarata Mehem Shafhem Mazalzim Nedarim. It must be that not only did they not teach you well, but in addition to that, they obviously also are mezalzel nedarim, just like you, because they must have learned it from somewhere. So that is a Pesach. And according to the sheet of Rabbi Eliezer, he holds you can remove the neder in this way. The Gemara is going to explain why not. Omer Rabbi Tzadok, Ad shepoiskena loy b'chvoid Abba v'imo. Instead of saying, "Oh, I'm embarrassing my parents by making neder," I have a better reason. Yiftachu lo b'chvoid makoim. So you should be able to use the Pesach that you're being Mavaza Kodesh Baruch Hu. The fact that you're being Mazalzel and Mavaza Nedarim, that in itself should be very, very strong. So on this, the Gemara is going to discuss what this next line means. Imkain in Nedarim. If you agree to that statement, then there's not going to be any more Nedarim. So let's look in the Ran. So the Ran says that when it comes to this person, when it comes to Kavod HaMakoim, Il Hayisi Yodea Kishnedarta Sheisim Mekel B'Chvoid HaMakoim K'Noder HaMelech Atzmo Kol Hayisi Noider. Did you realize that you're actually going to be Mavaz HaKadosh Baruch Hu? So in that situation, maybe you would have made such a neder. So in this, the Ran says, Ein Nedarim, which means that the Im Isa, the Paislin, if this is a Pesach, then there's no Nedarim. Skipping a few lines to the last thin line. She'en shum adam meiz panav, because no one's going to embarrass themselves. That even though I know that making a neder, I'm showing a lack of respect to Hashem, I don't care about God, I'm still going to make this neder. You're going to lie. You're going to be too embarrassed to admit that you would make the neder anyway, because really, the truth is you don't care. But you're not going to say you don't care, because that makes you look like a horrible person. You're not going to say you don't care about God and His mitzvos. And therefore, you're going to lie and you're like, yeah, it's true, that's a Pesach. But it wasn't really a Pesach. It's not something which is true to you. So therefore, when it comes to Kavod HaMakoim, a person may lie. When it comes to the Kavod of one mitzvah, so that is a Pesach, because a person may actually be sincere and admit to the fact that, no, I don't care about one mitzvah. So that's possible. But a person's not going to say that regarding the Kavod HaMakoim. As we see later on, Daf Samach Hey, a Pesach could be based on a pasuk. There's a prohibition of lo sisne sachicha b'vavecha, not to hate your brother in your heart. Mitzvah like that. Not hating people, that's something which people are not so machmir in. Maybe they're machmir on food to make sure that it has 8 hachsherim on it, but hating a Jew, no, that people aren't so machmir on. The feel a daita the hachi hayneider. Well, yishaker loimer ilu hayisu yadesh shekenu hayisu neider v'hainu nami did not paislim b'shabbasis. So therefore, this is the pshat, that when it comes to Kavod HaMakoim, because it's such a terrible travesty for a person not to care about anything, So even if you really don't care about anything, you're going to lie and say, oh yeah, it's a Pesach. But when it comes, therefore we're not going to agree to that as Kavod Makoim being a good Pesach. But when it comes to something which is one mitzvah, like for example, again, in this example, Lo Sisnes Achicha Bilvavecha, the Ran brings down, some people will be like, okay, fine, I don't care. It's one thing. And they won't be embarrassed about it. I'm allowed to hate this guy. You have no idea what this guy is. He's a terrible person to me, so I'm allowed to hate him, even though maybe you're not allowed to. A person can rationalize it. And therefore, because of that, that would be a Pesach. A person, therefore, because it's shaykh that he could possibly say, nah, you know what, I would still make this neder, regardless of me violating Lo Sisnes Achicha B'Vavecha. So when it comes to things which pertain to people, so that a person is not maybe prone to lie because it's smaller. Something which is such severity, like Kavod HaMakoim, no one is ever going to lie. Okay, so this is actually question 3. My shna de in paiskim b'chlad HaMakoim v'ilu min ha'kosu b'tarek hagon ilu ha'isi yodeh she'ata over alo sisna kiyotze b'paiskim. So this is what we said. When it comes to Kavod HaMakoim, we're afraid that a person is not going to be humiliated and embarrass himself to admit that he doesn't really care, and therefore he's going to end up lying when it comes to Kavod HaMakoim. Ma'ashenka, when it comes to one mitzvah, like so l'sisna, it's not so strict in people's eyes. A person may not lie, and therefore that's why it is a Pesach. Back in the Mishnah, Moedim Chachamim l'Rabbi Eliezer. Even though it's true the Chachamim say that using Kavod HaMakom is not a Pesach, they will agree, b'davar shebein levein aviv imo, that when it comes to matters between a father and a mother, that shepoiskin lo b'chavoid aviv imo. So basically, what they're saying is that we are chaylik with you using kavod hamakom as a Pesach. However, kavod aviv imo, like the Reish of the Mishnah, I am asking to you that would be a Pesach. And based on the language of the Ran, which you said before, V'od Amar Rabbi Eliezer, poiskin b'noilad. So again, there's a machlokas regarding noilad. Noilad is making a Pesach that did not exist when the neder was actually made. So there's a machlokas whether you can use that. So Ketza, what is an example of noilad? So the Mishnah says, So I'm going to make a neder regarding a certain person. The nasa seifer, and he becomes a scribe later on in life. Or shahaya masis benoi. Marry his daughter, marry the son. If I would have known that we're now family, or that this guy would have become a cipher, I would not have made a neder. So his becoming a scribe didn't happen at the time of the neder. So therefore, that's considered to be noilad, and therefore, according to the Chachamim, you cannot use that as a Pesach because it didn't exist. Or as Rashi says, the B'davar shul hoy ba'olam b'shas nidro, something that just didn't exist at the time of the neder, even though eventually it does come into the world later on, that will not work. Or it's a machlokas. I'm not going to go into this person's house. Also becomes a shul. So why? But at the time you made the neder, it wasn't a shul. So I knew it was going to be a shul. Gemara. So my ein noidu. So he said, the Chachamim responded that if it's true that you can use a Pesach b'chlod hamakom, then ein nedarim. There's no such thing as a nedarim. So what does it mean ein nedarim? So the Gemara gives 2 answers. Amar Abaya. Im kain ein nedarim nitarin yafeh. One shot is that the nedarim will not we're not going to be matter them well, which is kind of what we saw before already in the Ran. But let's look at the third wide line in the Ran. So he says that he would actually agree to the Rabbanon, the Rabbi Eliezer would, that which Rabbi Tzadok doesn't say this. Rabbi Eliezer only says when it comes to kavod aviv imoy, even though the Chachamim are oyser even by that. So why does Rabbi Eliezer make his distinction, as we saw before? Was actually the Rabbanon hold even kavod aviv imo is not a Pesach either. She'en poiskelu b'chavoid hamakom miu b'chavod aviv imo polig. The Rabbanon Asri, the Rabbanas, the Ran say, argue and says it's also, which is preferred in the Mishnah. In that situation, a person can never use that pasuk, that Pesach, in Adam Meiz. Because when it comes to embarrassing your parents, oh, your parents are going to be embarrassed. So a person isn't going to say, I don't care. That's how the Rabbanan view it. Hilkach in Poiskin. He's embarrassed to admit that he'd make a neder anyway, even though he's disgracing Hashem, so he'll lie. So it's a machlokus when we look at kabed Abba v'imo, whether a person would do it. So in Nedarim Nitarin Yafe means that when it comes to kabed makoim, a person will maybe lie, and it's not going to really be a true Pesach, and therefore that's the reason why it won't work. As we continue to Samach Dalad Mabez, a second answer. The different issue is that if we allow this Pesach, then a person may not end up going to a Chacham. So therefore, as we'll see in the Ran in a second, we had to not accept this Pesach, even though maybe it is a good Pesach, because everyone will use it. They'll just all say, oh, kavod makom, and then no one will go to a Chacham anymore to be mater the Nedarim. Says the Ran. Shekol echad ve'echad poisech Pesach zeh el atzmo. They'll do it themselves. Shari Pesach zeh royal chol Nedarim. It's fit for everyone. The kashulan imeh ha'taima moeder Rabbi Eliezer b'chlod ha'makom. If that's true, that Rabbi Eliezer agrees to this, so am I polig b'chlod Abba v'imo? So how come he agrees when it comes to kabed Abba v'imo, or actually he argues with kabed Abba v'imo, that a person can use this Pesach? According to this reason, you could still use kabed Abba v'imo to get out of going to a Chacham. So on this, the Ran says, it's possible the Rabbi Eliezer, the Ika Nedarim, the Kili Kuli High, that there are some Nedarim which are so light, she'enu Abba v'imo zilzul behen, that some Nedarim are not actually going to embarrass your parents. It's possible that the neder, it depends on the context of what neder you're actually making. And therefore, if it's a neder, according to him, he may feel it's not a bizui at all. Okay. Let's look at question TA 9, which is going to be TB 10. We'll see how I wrote it. So what does it mean, ein nedarim? So question 9, oh, ein nitarin yafe, because people are going to lie, or ein nedarim mishol mechacham kol echad yiftach la'atzmai. So let's see what I wrote for almost the exact same question, question 10. This is what I wrote, and I wrote this in English. Since a person who not be mater well, the person will not be mater well, as he could always say sheker, that this is a Pesach, when he really isn't truthful. Okay, since he will be mater ba'atzmo without a chacham, we are chayshish, he will always do this and then never go to a chacham. Okay, weiter. Tanan. So we learn umoy in our Mishnah, moinim chachamim Rabbi Eliezer, the chachamim who disagree with Pesach for Abba v'imo, they agree, but davar shebein levein Abba v'imo, that when it comes to matters levein Abba v'imo, shepoischem b'chvod Abba v'imo. So what exactly does that mean is a little unclear, because again they hold that when it comes to something which is just in general embarrassing your parents, no, but if it's something which is directly about your parents, that much a person's that level a person would be a Pesach. Now, Bishlam will Abaya, can according to the first answer of Abaya. Yarmim came in the Nedarim Nitarin, the Pastim Nedarim not going to be mater well. So Hacha, in this case here, Kivan Diachatzav, since he had the chutzpah already about his parents, Dichatzavle, so Ha'chatzavle. So he's going to have chutzpah. In other words, he made a neder against them. He was already disrespectful by making the neder. So it makes sense that Tanakama will say it's a neder with a Pesach, since they may say no and can't. And again, maybe it's that they'll have more chutzpah. So it's possible that in this situation it will work, because that a Pesach will work. Because since this person shows he doesn't necessarily care, the fact he made a neder to begin with, so therefore maybe he'll show chutzpah again, and therefore it won't be an issue of sheker. Maybe he's going to tell the truth, because sometimes this guy may not care. What's the difference if you're going to potentially go to a chacham or not be able to not go to a chacham anymore? So then, in this situation, why do the chachamim agree that this Pesach would work? Isn't the same issue? You're not going to go to a chacham. So Amri kivan dechol nidre losagu lahoin delav chacham hachanami poiskin. Since all nedarim, it's not enough to go without a chacham. So over here, it's a Pesach. In other words, he goes for all of his other nedarim. So he'll end up probably going for this one as well. So look in the round. Since he can make this Pesach, he's not going to go to a chacham here. So why would the chachamim agree in this situation that it's a Pesach? So the Ran says, Shahari Bishar Nedarim, when it comes to other Nedarim, we know that he hasn't used this Pesach. And he doesn't know this Pesach. He needs to go to a chacham. So we'll use this Pesach now. So because he's gone in the past, apparently this person has to have some track record that he's gone to a chacham. So therefore, we're going to assume he's going to continue going to chacham. So my time to Rabbi Eliezer. So there's a machlokus whether by noilad about a house and all of a sudden it becomes a beis hachnesses, or this person who becomes a scribe, is that a Pesach? So the pasuk says in Sefer Shemos, Kimesu kol hanoshim. It says that all of these people died. Now the question is, what is this going on? So the Ran reminds us, Afagav di Yisro hishpiel Moshe. The truth is that Moshe Rabbeinu had his father-in-law Yisro make a shvua. So he was given this wife Sipora. Moshe Rabbeinu lo haya nishma. He didn't make the shvua. El mitaysha haya yare medasan vaviram. But Moshe was very scared of dasan and aviram. Lafikach pasach HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem gave this Pesach kimesu kol anoshim hamavakshim es nafshecha. So we see that this is a noilad. This is noilad. That even though at the time of the neder, dasan and aviram were alive, and therefore he was afraid. So the Pesach was that don't worry, they have now died. And since they have now died, so therefore that's a Pesach, even though it's really noilad. Misa de noilad who Misa is noilad. So mekansha poisk noilad. So it's a raya that it works because they were alive at the time and then they died. For Rabbanan my tamayu. So why the Rabbanan not use this pasuk after all they were alive and they died? So Ksavri Hanhu, these guys, Dasan Aviram, what are you talking about? Me Maisi? They didn't really die. Whenever you have this language of Nitzim Nitzavim, that is referring to Dasan Aviram. And these words keep presenting themselves. And therefore, the truth is, as Rashi says, V'lo Mesu. Ad Masik Kairach. They didn't die until much later on, after they were already left Mitzrayim, and in the story of Korach, V'chol Adasai, Ela Hai Kimesu Shiardim Nechsehem Kfar Mishas Haneder Delav Noiludhu V'hoyu Kimesim. What's talking about is they lost all their money. El Omer Ishlakish Shiardim Nechsehem. Omer Bisham Levi Kol Adam She'en Lo Banim Choshev Kames. Also, someone who doesn't have children is Choshev Kames. Shenemar Havoli Banim. Give me children, v'im ayin meisanoich, and if not, I am going to be like I'm dead. So how does this answer the question? So this is an issue of noilad. Having no money, should be the exact same thing as noilad. So how does this any better? Okay, fine. They died. They didn't die, but the question is, that should still be considered to be an element of noilad. So if you look at this last line, Yerushalmi v'oini lab noilad hu omer Rab Zeira ha'niyos matsuya. Poverty is common. Usuhus lab noilad hu, and therefore it's not considered to be noilad. Omer Rabbi Lo ha'tohois matsuya. Poverty is common, and therefore the fact that they were rich, but they became poor, that is already not considered noilad. Therefore, life to death is noilad, and therefore the Rabbanan would say that would not be a Pesach. However, this is a situation of rich to poor, and something which is a davar shchiach, like we saw when it came to Kavos Savo and Rabbi Kiva. So that was also a davar shchiach, and therefore wasn't a noilad. Fine. Now on this we have the famous Gemara Vatanya, Arba Chashuvim Kames. There are 4 people that are like they're dead. Ani umatsara umatsuma mishin lobanim. Someone who's poor, someone who's saras, someone who is blind, and someone who has no children. Ani dechsev kimesu kol hanashim. All these people died, and Das and Aviram didn't actually die. Mitzaira, someone who has saras, dechsev al nati kames. So the fact is, if you look at their skin, it looks like their body is decomposing, and perhaps that's the significance of why the person is like a mace. And then it says v'suma dechsev, a blind person says an eicha b'machashachim hoshivani, that in the darkness you have placed me kemesi oilam, like the dead of the world. Says Rashi, kish adam nasan b'machshach ve'enu roya chashuv kemes. When a person is in the dark and he can't see, he feels like he's dead. He's alone. Give me children. If I don't have children, I'm going to be considered like I am dead, which is what Rachel was presenting to Yaakov. Okay, and of course the symbolism. Of course, tragically, some people cannot have children, but first of all, it could refer to someone who does not give over their life to another human being. So even if a person can't have a child, first of all, you could adopt a child. You could also be an educator. You can be someone that gives to another person. So the notion of having life and not being considered dead is the notion of having the capacity to give to something, to give to another person. But if you don't have children, it means you don't have children. It means you're totally for yourself. You're totally selfish. Which is the same reason why a poor person is like they're dead. Because if you're poor, of course you can do a lot of good things, but you're not able to give to another human being. That's why you have that feeling of being comparable to be someone who's dead. And also someone who's blind. Of course, a blind person contributes so much. But the idea is that they are dependent on another human being. They're not someone that's able to help another person, so to speak, but rather they are someone that is dependent on others for their survival. Okay. Fine. We're going to stop there. Let's see a couple of questions. Question 4. So he said, Adkan.